study computational ethics and social computing. She corrects me. I will leave it to her to correct it later on. And I appreciate it as slow as I do.
That's fine, yeah. I'll try not to be too straight.
I'm trying my best as well. And it's been great. We have been communicating really well and improving as well. Catherine has got lots of interesting practices in our faculty, and specifically in our School of Computer Science and Informatics. She developed some innovative approaches in enhancing her teaching and learning sessions, and we always receive very positive feedback from her students. I would like to pass it to Catherine to go through some of the examples, and also I have to apologize. One of my other colleagues, Sarah Wilford, was going to give us some demonstration on UDL and use of the DNU replay. She's unfortunately off sick, but Catherine currently covering her side as well. And after that, as I promised, I will also come along and give you some demos of my own practices in the classrooms, use of Blackboard, different approaches, e-marking, use of the best use of Turnitin for programming modules, which is unusual. So we normally use Turnitin for the modules involved with a bit of writing, essay writing, but I use it in my programming modules very nicely. I'd like to present that unofficially during the session as I promised. However, I have to dash now to sort out the certificate, which I'm still waiting. But I will pass it to Catherine, and I will be back in an hour or such to catch up with you. Okay? I'll pass it to Catherine.
Great, thanks, Hi, so I'm Catherine. I'm a reader in computing and social responsibility. So what I do is I look at the ethics of technology, I look at the social impact of technology, and I've got a computer science background, but I've also done philosophy of science and some history of science and things like that as well. So I've got an interdisciplinary approach to things, and I really like to bring out the creativity in my students. So what I've called this talk, it's not the same as on your program, but what I've called the talk is making the rather boring interesting, because I teach research methods to students. And I'm sure that if you've ever taught research methods, how to do research, how to do literature reviews, things like that, if you teach that to computing students, they find that very, very boring. Because reading a lot is boring, and writing about what you've read is boring. So I apologize if I go a little bit quickly. I'm Australian, and Australians tend to talk very fast, so I'm trying my best. So if you miss something, just please wave at me and I'll try to repeat it. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about two modules that I teach. The first module is a second-year undergraduate module that teaches students how to do a literature review. And then the second module is a third-year module that's an option module for students who are doing research projects as part of their final year projects. Have you talked about final year projects?
No,
okay,
nobody has touched that. That's a great idea.
Good, all right, I'll go over that as well then. So I'll talk about the first module first. All right, so in this module, which is called Introduction to Research and Ethics, because I do ethics, I like to make students do ethics, so I get them thinking about a topic that's got something to do with technology and what the social impact or ethical impact or environmental impact of that technology might be. So the sort of common topics that students choose are things like privacy in Facebook, or politics and Twitter, or robots and artificial intelligence and things like that. So what that impact might have on jobs, those sorts of topics. So looking towards the future, and also current kind of topics of interest that you see on the news and things like that. So they basically choose a topic where they pick as technology and some sort of social or ethical issue. They then do, this is just an overview of the assessment that I have for them, they do an annotated bibliography where they read 8 papers. 4 of them have to be academic, and the other 4 can be things like newspapers or YouTube videos or any other way that they get their news information, like information about a topic. Then they peer market. Now I'm going to talk about peer marketing on this module because that's one of the things that the students enjoy doing. Then they write a literature review, which is the boring bit. They write a 1,500-word essay that basically explains in a classic research-style literature review way. It introduces the topic, it gives the background, it presents an argument that says something like maybe that Facebook makes people feel sad because they look at all the nice things other people are doing, and that makes them feel sad. And then they present evidence to show from the literature that they've read to back that argument up. So it's a basic research literature review. They then identify what we call the gaps in the knowledge, so what might you want to go and investigate if you were to go and take on, say, do a survey or do some interviews or do some further research like you might do in a research environment, and that's really where that module kind of then stops. Then the fun part starts because I then get them to do a video. And the videos are also peer marked. They have to do a 5-minute video that shows all of the result, like that discusses and shows images and music and all sorts of makes what they wrote for their literature review kind of entertaining and aims at a general audience, that they could show their mum or dad and they'd be able to understand what they were talking about. So that's peer marked, and I use my own software for that. Because there now exists some software that's coming onto the market that will do this. I haven't tried it out, but this now exists, and but I had to write my own software to do it, because I've got a computer science background, why not use it, right? And then in that peer marking process, I also give them some opportunities to reflect, and the reflection bit is actually probably the most important part of all of this. Yes, it's nice that they can write a literature review, but actually the reflection side of it allows them to internalize, to take internally what they've thought about, and it also helps them to process what exactly it is that where they started, which is not knowing how to do a literature review, the processes they've gone through to understand how they actually create a literature review, and then the results at the end, I can now write a literature review. And that actually helps them understand what they've learned so much better than me just saying, this is what you've learned, okay? They tell me what they've learned. It's really, really interesting. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how I make this interesting to students, because this is the big problem with this particular module. It's now being taken by over 500 students in the second year, which is a new challenge, and actually I've had to completely redo some of this stuff because it's just not scalable. I used to have, when I first wrote this module, I had 45 students, and then it went up to 110 students, and now it's going to 500 students.
Across which disciplines?
Computer science has taken it on, there's the business computing modules, the cybersecurity, forensics students have taken it on. So it's now really, really big.
The students, they choose
this is compulsory module. Yeah. What it does, and the reason we make it compulsory is because in the final year, so it used not to be compulsory, it was only compulsory for business computing students. And the reason that we've decided to make it compulsory across a whole lot of other programs is because of the fact that in the final year, they have to do a final year project, which requires them to do a literature review. It requires them to then do a set of development requirements, so user requirements for a system if they're developing a system, or research if they're doing research project. Yeah. So the final year, so and the problem was is that students in computer science and forensics and the other ones weren't doing very well in the literature reviews. But my students who had come through this module were doing much better at that. So that's why. So that's a good win for this module too, right? So the final year project, the students can choose between a development project and a research project. And the research project is pretty much like an academic research style thing. They come up with a topic and a research questions that they want to work on. They go and they do a literature review. They then go out and maybe do some interviews or a questionnaire or both or some other kind of data collection activity. Then they write it up, they do all the analysis and write it all up and do some statistics and present some pretty graphs and that sort of thing for a classic style research project. The development projects, they do basically that basic kind of waterfall style development life cycle where they do some research at the beginning to find out what the problem domain is. So maybe they want to develop an app for, you know, helping students borrow books from a library or something like that. So they have to do a bit of research about what the library's needs are, what the users' needs are, all that sort of thing. What already exists, what programming languages to use, what sort of frameworks they can use, and all of this is encapsulated it can be encapsulated in a literature review style approach as well. So this is basically one of the selling points of this module, is that it helps these students prepare for their final year project. In second year, they're not usually thinking about their final year project, so it's really good to remind them that they have to do this again, and to actually learn from this process. So that's why I say, you know, what they'll be doing, this module, and what they'll be able to learn from it is something they can use next year in their final year project. But also, if they want to become data analysts or any sort of analysts or business, I don't know, project managers, they're going to need to do some reading at some point, present an argument to somebody, and have evidence to back that argument up. So basically, there's, I remind them throughout this process several times that this has got outside. We're not just making them do it because we like to torture them. We're making them do it because we think it's going to be something that they will use later in life in their jobs. So the other way I make this sort of a bit more interesting is I don't just stand up and tell them stuff. I get them actively doing it. So we have, I use a lot of constructive alignment in my teaching practice, which is I find that a really good solid theory that helps students to understand what it is I'm asking them to do, and put theory into practice straight away. So I tell them the things that they need to do, and then they basically use these worksheets that I've developed to actually go out then and do them. So we'll work through in class, for example, writing a questionnaire. That's the next one. In class, for example, we'll do a worksheet that helps them search for the topic areas and search for literature. And I take them stage by stage through different search engines, and then we look at how rigorous those results are. So, for example, if you go to a newspaper, it's not going to be as rigorous as, say, for example, like academic journals and books and things like that. So we work through a lot of the activities while I'm also teaching them what it is. I have a lot of enthusiasm for research. I'm actually mostly a researcher. I only teach on 2 modules. So I mostly work on a lot of European projects. I also work for do some work in America for the ACM's Code of Ethics. I'm a member of their professional ethics committee, and we've been doing a lot of research into how to get computing professionals to be more professional. So I basically have a lot of excitement for research, and I try to inject that as much as I can. And I've got a big loud voice, and I can kind of, hopefully make people vaguely interested in what I'm interested in. And this is a quote that I got from feedback from one year, which said it was the nice but slightly crazy Australian. And I think I quite like that as sort of the my persona, I suppose. So also the other thing I do that I think is really important is that I'm constantly giving positive reinforcement. So I tell students when they do well, and basically I sometimes get a little bit conspiratorial with them if they mess up. So particularly with referencing, which is the thing that most students really hate. They hate learning how to reference, they don't understand it. To be honest, it's a ridiculous system, and it is, arbitrarily like weird and strange and confusing. So I don't know, anyway, but they don't understand it really well. So we sit down, we're all right, okay, so this is how you play this game, right? We need to play the game of referencing. Here's how we play the game. And it's a little bit conspiratorial. I kind of get saying, look, here's how it really is. I'm not just doing this because I think it's fun to make you do this. You're doing this because you want to get it right, and you want to not end up, with an academic offense at the end of what you're doing. So the other thing that I do most of the time, I try to anyway, is that the students, I think over the years, as lecturers kind of get more relaxed and more confident in their lecturing, they start to, especially as you get a bit older, you start to see the students as kind of much younger and perhaps, you know, less sort of experienced. And so I think sometimes I certainly know that I fall into the trap of thinking that they don't sort of think as much as they probably should do. But so what I try to do in this module is I actually work with them, basically saying, look, here's how this module works. We're in this together. Let's make sure that we work together to make this module a success. And really, if you've got any issues with the module, just come and talk to me about it and we'll sort it out. So I treat them kind of peer-to-peer more than a, you know, person up the top looking down, if that makes sense. So actually, yeah, and also, especially if it's a new module. So for example, I'm having to change a lot about this module this year. And so really what I'm going to say to the students is I'm going to get up and I'm going to say straight out, look, all of this is new. I haven't tried this on anyone yet. You guys are the guinea pigs, but please, you know, we're all in this together. I've got a whole bunch of backup plans if things go wrong, but here's how we're going to have a go, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but you won't be penalized for it if it doesn't work. We'll just try something else instead. And they then feel like they buy into this approach, and they sort of give a little bit more than they maybe would if it was just me saying, here's how it is, and you're going to do it like this. Does that make sense? So I sort of, it's almost a transactional relationship.
It demands a lot of effort.
It does.
Lots of work, and demands your enthusiasm.
It definitely demands enthusiasm.
I feel this.
But you got it. But I think the rewards are worth it, and I've certainly felt more fulfilled from doing these modules where I put the effort in and do this enthusiasm thing than ones where I've just been given the material and being told just to do it. So if that makes sense, do you know what I mean? So anyway, so I'm going to just show you an example. So I'm really, particularly the video here, the video system is really quite like what they end up creating. So the videos, I give them a lot of leeway. They can pretty much do whatever they like as long as it's got to do, like as long as they present the information that's in their literature review, and they do it it has to be creative. It has to have some creative flair. And one of the things that I found as they're doing these is that they put a lot of work into this. So this is only supposed to be like 20% of the marks, but they put hours and hours and hours of work into this, and I wouldn't know about it unless they wrote a reflective thing. They wrote a reflective bit at the end of the marking section. And so for example, this student, which I'm going to show you in a minute, he developed a whole 3D model to show off his skills and give some flair to his video, just for this video. So he spent, I think he said about 15 hours just developing the model for this video, and it really only shows up for about 10-15 seconds at the beginning of the video, and then the video itself is fairly average. But if I hadn't had the reflective bit where he explained to me what he'd done in the process of creating the video, I would never have known. I would have thought he just got that off the internet. So I'm going to show you this for the example. It doesn't really matter if So he's got this bit, it's very a bit hard to see, but he's got this model in the background. And that took him 15 hours to do this kind of pushies. And he's not a games design student or anything, he just does business computing. This was something he was interested in. And then he has this video about robots taking over jobs, where he cuts in different news stuff. He then talks over the top of it and presents some of the research. I'm not going to show you the whole 5 minutes of it, but basically, this is the style of stuff that they're doing. So at the end, basically, I have a reflective. So this is sort of separated into two sections. This assessment. They submit the video, they create this video, they submit it, and then they mark 10 of their colleagues, their peers' videos through this software that I developed, which I can show you later if you're interested in. There's not a lot of point because it's disappearing, but anyway. But basically, at the end of the peer marking thing, they're asked 4 questions, and one of the questions is, what did you enjoy most about creating the video? What was, how do I phrase it? Something like, what was the biggest challenge? How do you feel about peer marking? And what was the best thing you learned about in the module or something like that? And basically, so the students have this space to explain their whole video making process. So this student explained that he spent 15 hours making this model for this video, and then they also explained to me what they really enjoyed about it, and I get all this feedback about how well the process went. So I had no idea, for example, that some students really struggle with finding the appropriate video software. So in the next year when I did the module, I went through and I showed them a bunch of different video editing software so they could make it easier for themselves. And really you wouldn't get that feedback unless you went and asked them otherwise, because all they do is they submit the video and that's all you'd see to mark, right, normally. So giving them that space to actually then give you direct feedback about their process has actually helped me to then streamline it for the next year. And also the other thing that it gave me was they felt like they were being listened to when they had this space to talk about their process and the things they found frustrating. And then that didn't come back again on the module review at the end of the year, where they had to write what they liked, didn't like about the module. I never had any of the same complaints that they made in the reflective bit as part of the assessment come back to haunt me in the stuff that then went to my boss, basically. So it was a little bit, I gave them some space to basically complain about things that didn't go so well, and then we had a chat about it. And it was a really nice way to kind of make them feel like they were being listened to. So the students generally found the work was lots of fun. They thought it was the best assessment they'd ever done in the module. Just being able to do something creative was very outside of the scope of normal business computing style arenas. So they often would go the extra mile to that they'd challenge themselves and try to make something as good as they could. But like I said before, normally when we collect assessments, like even things like posters and stuff like that, we rarely capture what process the students actually went through to create that. And in many ways, you can see a lot of the struggle that goes on with students, and especially students who perhaps would normally struggle with, perhaps writing or being a bit creative or putting ideas together. And it allowed me really to understand how much effort the student had gone to as well. So if they just put it together in 5 minutes before the deadline and whacked it in, they wouldn't have as detailed a process. But then some students would write almost pages of stuff about what they struggled with, what they enjoyed doing, how they put all the things together. And it also meant that I got loads of feedback. So this is some feedback that students gave me, which I kind of, in my research style, I clustered into kind of themes. So basically, they enjoy rising to challenges. So this video, they'd already done quite a lot of work in that semester, and then I asked them to do a video. And at the beginning of the year, most people who've never made a video think that making a video is actually really easy to do, but it's really hard. But the students don't know that either. But they actually enjoy rising to the challenge. So things like, it was difficult using the application to make the video because I've never made a video before or used that program. This was my first time making a video, so as exciting as I like media-related things, everything was difficult, and there was way too much time wasted on this irrelevant assignment that could have been for something meaningful. You can't please everyone all of the time. But it felt like learning to ride a bike for the first time. I enjoyed using the software and putting everything together because it was new, and at the start I had no idea what I was doing. So I finished my video, and to make it look nice made me feel a sense of accomplishment. And learning a new video making software, which was tricky at first, but became easier once I had learned more about the software. So you can kind of see that we have the people that, there was only maybe 1 or 2 people that had this idea out of 100 and something. Most people were in the, it was hard, but I enjoyed the challenge, or I rose to the challenge and I felt accomplished at the end. The other thing that I basically found was that students who do a non-creative, so business computing is not a particularly creative subject. Mostly they do a lot of process diagrams and databases and programming and things like that. Now, I mean, yes, programming can be creative, but they're very rarely given space just to kind of bring their own interests into things. So these students really enjoyed making the video. It says, making the video was an enjoyable experience. Being the first time making a video ever, it was great to come up with some creativity on how to make a great video. It took a lot of time, but at the end of the video, it felt like some achievement was made and funny moments which could not be forgotten during the creation of the video. This particular student had a blooper reel at the end of all the mistakes that he made, because he videoed himself and some friends doing like these interview sort of things, like fake news interview type stuff. And he had sort of where they all cracked up laughing, and he had a whole minute just of them laughing, which was quite funny. But I enjoy filming and planning into what content to be displayed in the edit part, as I enjoy creativity and like to have all parts included. You know, I enjoyed using the creativity to put the video together. I found some fun tasks. So they enjoyed doing this, even though they may have struggled with some of the difficulties. So the peer marking aspect, so where they have to mark 10 of their peers' videos, so they sit in a lab. They basically get 2 hours to sit and watch 10 videos and write, answer a couple of questions like what was good, what could be improved, and a couple of other sort of questions like that. If you're interested in the questions, I can show you those, but they're fairly basic, sort of, you know, what did you enjoy, what would be improved in terms of content and the flair. The design, the creativity of it. Anyway, so they also do peer marking for their annotated bibliographies, and the annotated bibliographies are basically a write-up of the eight papers that they've read for this module, and they write basically about 300 words total, answering a bunch of the questions that I've asked. So for example, is the paper academic or not? What's the argument of the paper? How might this help you answer your research question? What audience is it aimed at? All those sorts of questions. So they did peer marking. They got 2 reviews from other markers, from their peers, and they seemed to enjoy doing the process because they could find out what questions to pay attention to. Their English is not always great. Peer marking videos has offered a great opportunity to have an insight on others' work. I learned just how many different approaches I could have took, which is also terrible English. Don't look at my students for English. As there are a lot of original ideas in the peer marking. Before this topic, I have not previously done peer marking, so I learned how to fully assess others' work by following mark schemes, but also giving advice on other people's work helped me to understand what was expected from myself. So this is the other thing, is that doing a peer marking approach allowed them to understand a little bit about what we go through as lecturers when we do marking. And they found out it was very subjective, there were very few objective aspects to some of the marking, and they found it hard. And I had many students come up to me afterwards saying things like, I never knew that it was so difficult to do marking, and I don't know what you go through all this, like this is really hard, now I understand what you go through. So so I've learned that peer marking helps you to learn from other students' work and improve your own in future. Gaining reviews from others gives you constructive criticism, but best of all, editing someone else's work is one of the best ways to learn how to edit your own.
So could it please, I'm not sure I can make a proper translation of peer marking.
Okay, peer marking.
In other words.
I can show you I can show you what they did if you're interested. I'll have to log into our system. I've got plenty of time, so I don't mind doing this.
I know what does it mean, peer review?
It's like peer review, but they also mark it, like they assess it, so that they give a grade to it at the end. I'll show you how we do it.
Это оценка товарищей, да? сказать, оценкодавающие?
Нет, они оценивают peer review, когда вы переводите, рецензируете, допустим, статью. Статья
So we do this on
первое, они
Turnitin.
еще как бы выставляют оценки. То есть тоже как бы рецензируют, но еще и какие-то
Оценивают.
Нет, нет, об этом идет речь. Это
So
один
we use
студент оценивает
Turnitin for
другого.
this. Have you seen Turnitin before? Have you ever seen this Turnitin?
We have heard.
You've heard of it, all right.
Yeah.
So Turnitin is a really interesting. It's got a lot of things that you can do with it, but one of the big things you can do with it is peer review. So you can set up. I can show you. So basically. What you can do is let the students do peer review of the assessments. So you set up an assessment, and then you set up a peer review assessment, and then this will, you can give it, you can get it, it'll automate, what it does is it has a cutoff date, so if you have a deadline for your assessment, let's say the 1st of January, it will then have a cutoff, and then it will distribute all of the papers to be reviewed amongst the students in the group. And this is determined by how many you want each student to review. So I've said I want each student to review 2 papers.
And you choose these papers?
No, they've submitted them. It's their peers' papers. So they've written the assessment, which is, okay. I'll show you what that looks like too. So we have this, this is the assessment. So basically so each student has submitted an assessment. So let's have a look at this one. For example,
So you have a special software?
Yeah, I don't know why it's doing this thing. Let's see if it works through. So Turnitin is part of that, like, it's basically, it's mostly used for plagiarism detection. So you can use it, what it does is it looks at the paper and it compares it to all of the other papers that are including academic papers. So you can see if a student has copied and pasted other people's work.
But to find the plagiarism, do they use certain software?
Yeah, it's called Turnitin. It's the same software, yeah. But you can also use, so that's the primary use of it is for plagiarism detection, but it also has, they've built up a lot of other tools in it now. Alright, so the students have submitted these assessments. So this is basically, this is an assessment that has been submitted by a student. And then what we do is we get the other students to read 2 of their peers' assessments. So they're the papers that I'm talking about, these are the students' assessments. So the way that we do that Okay, so what you can see here on the left is the assessment that the student marked. So this is the one that the student was reviewing. And on the right-hand side here, this is actually their review. So that's actually their review of the paper. So they've answered all these questions about the papers they've seen, and they've written a review. And so they have to do 2 of those.
And what about question? Who formulated?
Me. So other citations.
So you gave them like a scheme.
Yeah, they had a marking scheme, just like I would use if I were marking the word. We said that there
Ну,
are
4 часа там, да.
100 and something of them. I didn't want to mark 100
Как
and
минимум
something
2
of them. I
часа
certainly won't
надо
want to
будет
mark
на что-то
500 and something of them this year. So what you can do is use the students, like the students actually learn a lot from this process. It feels a bit like cheating, but it's not. And I'll show you why.
Ну, из магазинов я там видел только продуктовые, сразу говорю. Ну, там, на месте, когда мы там ходили. Ну, почему в Дьюти? Там вполне в этом, за пределами уже. Это изюм.
Он не за городом.
Ну, это, в принципе, считается Лондоном. Но не то, что не за городом. Там в самом аэропорту, в принципе. Но...
С чемоданами.
Ну да, то есть там не погуляешь особо. В общем, жесть.
Еще и пьют рано.
Могли на час позже выехать, на самом деле, даже если они боятся пробок.
Нет, там дело не в пробках. Мне он сын сегодня написал, говорит, что в Хитроу, например, да, там надо обязательно не менее чем за 3 часа приехать. Если ты приезжаешь и у тебя меньше, чем 3 часа до твоего отлета, тебя могут даже не пустить в аэропорт. Но это в Хитроу, так, ну, такие правила. То есть там есть такая особенность. Ну, это для Хитроу.
Okay, so this is what we do after they've marked the work. We moderate it. So this is a very complicated spreadsheet which shows each of the students' work and then who marked it, what mark they gave, and then the final mark, which is the mark that we've decided that it deserves because we've read all the reviews of it. And then we give them feedback. We actually mark the peer marking.
So this is a
Yeah.
marking.
Yeah, so this is the only marking that we actually do. We only read the reviews. The only time we read the actual original assessment is if there's conflicting reviews. So if someone gives it 20 and someone gives it 80, there's obviously some problem there, so we review it properly then. And that's why most of the time they give a good effort, and because they want to get these marks.
So based on their own peer marking,
Yeah.
you can do your final.
Exactly. So we look at the peer marking they do and we say, did they do a good job of peer marking it? Does it look reasonable? If it looks reasonable and the 2 marks are fairly close to each other, no problem. Otherwise, we need to look at it. So it cuts down quite significantly the amount of original marking we have to do, which is really useful. Yeah, but
What's the scale?
yeah, so this is, it's very complicated. It was not something I ever planned to show to other people, so I apologize. They get 15 marks for doing a good review. So if they do a good review, they get 3 marks, a total of 3 for each of the categories. So whether they've completed the review, so whether it's complete, if it's a good review, is it constructive, or is it just people saying, no, this is terrible, it's terrible, it's terrible? Is the mark that they gave reasonable? So did they give them, 100 out of 100 even though there were lots of problems, for example? Or did they give them, roughly a good mark? Then they have a little space to reflect, which I can show you. So down the bottom here, I asked them, what's the most important thing about your own work that you've learned from reviewing the students' work? And they say, this guy says, I could have written more about strengths and weaknesses of articles. So that's what he's learned from this experience. And so I give them marks based on, this is not a very good, I usually ask for more than that. So this guy probably didn't do very well. So yes, that's the reflective statement. There's 2 marks for the reflective statement. And then they get a mark out of 15, and then I have some notes there based on that explain That's the feedback to the student about how good their marking was. Yeah, so I sum it up. So then the final mark for the student of their work, their actual assessment work, the paper, is this one in the green. Yeah, and then the mark that they get for the, there's an average mark out of the 2 reviews they get for the marking itself. So, does that kind of explain?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so no problem. So I do a similar thing. So this is a similar thing for the videos. So the video peer marking. I also look at all the reviews that they've done for the videos, and we give them the same, use the same criteria for their marking as well. So they have a much longer reflective statement they have to write at that point, but they also have to mark 10 pieces of work. So it's a bit more complicated, but actually it's much easier because in some ways. Okay, so that's how the peer marking works. I mean, the Turnitin software lets you do text-based, but not video. So I had to write my own software that shows all of the videos and lets the student type in their reviews. And that was the software that I wrote, which I can probably show you if you're interested. I think it's still up on my website. Sorry, I need to find the right. I don't have the login details change each year, and I don't have the login details for the peer marking to hand. But all right, so back to what I was going. So hopefully that's explained a bit about how the peer marking works. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So back to my presentation. Okay. So they think that the peer marking is really beneficial. So getting reviews from others gives you constructive criticism. But best of all, editing someone else's work is the best way to learn how to edit your own. So they were able to give suggestions for editing. Before this topic, I've not previously done peer marking. I learned how to fully assess others' work by following mark schemes, but also giving advice on other people's work helped me to understand what was expected. I've learned from peer marking you can clearly tell when someone has put effort into their videos, because the one which are the most entertaining and engaging clearly has the most effort put into them. So they're starting to learn a little bit about what it's like to be us, right? And how, and what looks like a good assessment, and what maybe doesn't look like a good assessment, and what goes into that. And they learn a lot from that experience because they can then apply that to other subjects and things like that as well. Okay, and then the reflective statements, they really shed a lot of light on the experiences the students had while they were doing the work. So students say, for example, the most difficult part was that I felt I didn't have enough time to create the video I really wanted to create. I learned that making video is not easy and takes hard work, but it also improved my skills such as being confident, and I learned how to make a video. Recording to my voice was difficult because I wanted to make sure I sounded good and was clear, which sometimes took a few attempts and was very time consuming. I've learned a lot on video editing and creative skills which I will carry through to the rest of my degree. I learned there should be a minimum amount of time spent on these assignments. I found it difficult making the video. I had unique ideas, but I was not able to use the software as well as I'd like. So there are things like, and this one, when I was creating the video, there was an interview. It was good, but in the process, some funny moments caused longer time to finish, and 1 hour creation took 3 hours. So you learn little stories about the students and the processes that they took as they did that. All right, so that's one module. I want to talk a little bit about the second module, which is a third year option module called Research Methods, where students learn how to put research methods into practice. So things like questionnaires and interviews. Was there
Они мне сказали, где, собственно, ресторан находится.
Они по Google карте нашли.
for whom? For me or the students?
No. For students.
How many hours face to face per week?
No.
Ну, перед закончится. 6 чем.